Oh, hi. It's been a while. I have been busy, to say the least. I had another video I wanted to put out before this one, but I can't really achieve a format I really like, so it will stay in the back burner for a while. I will hopefully offer you more insights on some of my other decks soonish, but in the meanwhile I thought I could share some thoughts on a subject I often think about. Let's begin with a question. Gun to the head, which one is better, Grim Tutor or Grim Servant? You thought of Grim Tutor, am I right? In a vacuum, yes, cost less, not restricted by devotion, obviously better. The problem is, there is no real vacuum, and this is not a real gun. You hopefully are playing these cards in a deck, which has a specific strategy for which you will be including cards that either make the strategy or enhance it in some way. So let's try again. You are building a NZ Toolbox Tutor deck and you are feeling like you need a tutor, but you only got one slot for that. Grim Tutor or Grim Servant? Now, the mistake I see some less experienced players make when faced with a similar choice is going straight to the best option on paper, just looking at what's printed on the card. Which can be reasonable, I'm not trying to tell you that Grim Tutor is trash, it's a great card in a NZ deck, it's literally a Swiss Army knife. Pay an extra 1 black and 3 life to cast any card in your deck. Not even considering the Servant, though, can be a bit short-sighted. First off, Grim Servant is a creature and costs 3 and a black, which corresponds to mana value 4, which, would you look at that, is the exact threshold at which NZ lets you blitz creatures. So, hopefully, it will be costed 2 and a black or less most of the times, so even better than Grim Tutor's cost. Its effect is an enters the battlefield effect, so unless you really need a blocker, blitzing it out is a good way to recycle it in exchange of 1 extra card in hand. Generally, the fact that it's a creature in a creatures based deck is great. It can attack, block, die, be reanimated, there are so many possibilities, and if you are worried about the devotion restriction, there are many valid targets to search for, even if you just have an NZ out on board. For instance, you could search for a Birthing Ritual and immediately use it to turn the Servant into another creature, or Wake the Dead for some instant speed reanimation, which could include the Servant as well if it was blitzed. Am I advocating for Grim Servant based on a single deck I own? Absolutely not, who do you think you are listening to? I am advocating for Grim Servant based on 2 decks I own. Generally, the fact that it's a creature in a creatures based deck is great. It can attack, block, die, be reanimated, there are so many possibilities, and in addition to that, Grim Tutor won't make me a 1-1 horror windmill, while Grim Servant will. More examples, it's a zombie for Wheel of Wolverina, it's a body for Braids to Sacrifice, it can block creatures attacking your Planeswalker in Yoke-Mod Super Friends, it can be flickered by Aminatu, I could go on. This was just a quick, if you allow, egregious example of a card. I believe the level of synergy a creature can bring in the right deck can be easily overlooked, especially when a shining low mana cost, maybe even instant speed non-creature spell doing the same is just there, waiting to be included in your list. I know, sometimes accepting a higher mana cost for a sorcery speed version of what you wanted doesn't really sound appealing. I was there too guilty as charged. Why should I play this 6 mana thing here when I can do the same on my opponent's turn for half as that with a single color? In this case, I would argue that could be a nice enough incentive, yet that's not always the case. Now a quick pair of disclaimers. First off, of course, if you are playing any Spellslinger deck of sorts, you probably will have much better motivation for avoiding creatures in favor of non-creature spells. I may even talk about that a bit sometime in the future. Secondly, I'm going to talk mostly of creatures with enters the battlefield effects. The reason is simple, I'm looking at creatures that can take a role similar to instants and sorceries, resolving almost immediately after being cast, like Eternal Witness is a parallel to Regrowth. Of course, there are other creatures that can take a similar role. Catar Commando for instance qualifies, as it can be immediately sacrificed to mimic a disenchant. But, say, Magus of the Order does not, as it requires an additional piece given it haste to actually be comparable to a spell. Although if your deck has ways to consistently give your creatures haste, count that in too. You see, there is a way to look at such spell-like creatures with Enter's effect. You can see them as sorceries, or sometimes instants, that leave a token on the battlefield which is the actual body of the creature. Now, don't go around telling people I said creatures are actually sorceries that make tokens, that was just figurative. Once the effect is done, the creature is virtually a vanilla creature, or as they say French vanilla if it has any keywords, but following that line of thought, casting an Eternal Witness is like casting a Regrowth, where the extra green mana lets you keep a 2-1 human druid on the board and the effect resolves after it enters the battlefield. This is very relevant already because of a simple reason, the combat phase! Remember when you didn't include that huge creature in your combat-focused deck because it had no evasion? That little tier 1 body is the reason why. Now you can chump block those big non-evasive creatures. Great job! Sometimes this might mean chumping, I don't know, 4 or 5 damage. Other times it could be 20, some other times it will be 60, as that 20 creatures will attack another one of your opponents who has no blocker instead 3 turns in a row. Now think how that would be if that little body on your board also had Death Touch. Or instead of a 2-1 vanilla body it was a 6-6 trampling menace. Now you can go on the offensive and start using the chunky body to apply pressure on your opponent's life total. We haven't even talked about deck synergy yet. Alright, of course, Flicker deck will obviously pack in lots of this. I don't think you need me telling you to do so, but there are other cases. Playing clones? Not far from a Flicker deck. Playing Reanimator, your effects can now be recorded multiple times. Playing Aristocrats, you got another body to feed your sacrifice outlets. Playing a go wide, combat focused token deck, that's another body that's getting pumped up when you are going for the final alpha strike on your opponents. Especially if you focus on combat, one way or another, the extra creature will always be relevant in some way, where another type of card might have not. If you are playing around a specific creature type, then go ham! If you can swap a non-creature card for a creature card, it is probably worth doing so. Say, I used to have a Varina deck, and one of the best changes I made was 1. To replace some instants with creatures, and 2. For going all ramp for just zombies, low-cost zombies that could already be able to attack when Varina hit the field. Anything that could be done with a zombie was probably done with a zombie. Besides Kindred synergies, your commander too can benefit from that. There are blatant ones like Galta Primal Anger, which are literally screaming, "Please play creatures!" But also less direct ones like Adeline, which will be happy to have utility creatures go on a suicide mission to get some tokens, or Lenore. Lenoir?
Linor.
Well, she will gladly accept Fairhaven Elf in place of Cultivate if they can help achieving Coven. But wait, there's more. Your criticals will be such also while still in your library. Insane, am I right? There are a plethora of effects that can benefit from this. Taking an example from my first video again, in my Zelig Sanity Flare deck, the more creatures I play, the more consistently I will be able to pump out 1/1 horrors, hence why I'm always trying my best to balance between speed and synergy, often preferring as lower effect to have one extra creature for effect chaining consistency. But it can be simpler than that, there are many effects that check for creatures cards specifically beyond them hitting your graveyard. Anthrax Rampage will let you get creatures out of the top of your library, Birthing Ritual does the same, Grizzly Salvage, Hoyer Caslam, hell, even the recent web of, through the Omen Path. If you are running creature tutors of any sort, swapping out some instant and sorcery with creatures with similar effect is also a useful change, as now you are adding extra utility to those tutors. Need to remove an artifact? Both Talia's Lancers and Recruiter of the Guard can get you Lauren of the Third Path. Court of Calling can find a Ravenous Chupacabra to deal with a scary creature, or Plagon if you have a good board of walls but really need to burst draw a bunch of fresh cards. Speaking of Court of Calling, that's a good example to show you don't have to forego instant speed completely. Besides creature coming with flash already bundled in, there are many ways these days to grant it. Vedalken and Orrery is always valid in any color identity, blue as generic flash enablers, but also green as some specific ones for creatures. Black has ways to achieve instant speed reanimation, treating your graveyard as a literal toolbox of effects, while white has tons of flicker effects to repeat enters effects, along with blue again. Finally, red has both few sneak attack effects, allowing you to drop a creature from your hand at any time at the cost of sacrificing it afterwards, and a few effects which can create token copies at instant speed, despite most of them being restricted to sorcery speed. Then, of course, in multicolor you get a few more options. There is also a synergy I always like to include in my decks if they allow it. If you include any creature with an Archamancer effect, that is, returning an instant or sorcery spell from your graveyard to your hand on ETB, you can use a flicker spell like Ghostly Flicker, Ghostway, or Eerie Interlude, or a reanimation spell like Living Death, Wake the Dead, Rise of the Dark Realms, to essentially keeping on repeating other ETB effects as long as you have mana to recast the spell. Let me paint a clearer picture. You have Skoa, Ember Mage on the battlefield, along with Pinnacle Monk. Then proceed to cast Ghostly Flicker. Ghostly Flicker will flicker both of them, resolving and going to your graveyard. When entering, Skoa will deal 4 damage to any target, while Pinnacle Monk will see Ghostly Flicker in the graveyard and return it to your hand. Congratulations, you now have a 3 mana instant speed way to deal 4 damage to any target as you need. You can change the Archamancer Impersonator, you can change the repeated ETB, you can change the spell. In a way or another, this may easily make a game-winning engine. After all this talking about creatures, you may say, but Cappy, isn't all the discourse valid for other permanents as well? Of course, yes, my friend. Say you are playing Dargo the Shipbreaker, Ariad's Tempting Apple can be better than any Trident spell, as you can sacrifice both the Stolen Creature and the Apple to Dargo, turning it into a sorcery speed removal. Of course, if you are focusing on other specific card types, those will be more relevant than creatures, yet creatures will always have a pivotal role in some way. Unless, again, you're playing a Spellslinger deck and you just need to be 1 life above 0 and have a good turn to win, of course. Playing artifacts, you got artifact creatures. Playing enchantments, enchantment creatures. Playing super friends, someone's got to block the attacks on your planeswalkers. Playing battles. How? I mean, someone's gotta attack those. I think I'm not smart enough about creatures in Commander for now, so to close this video off, creatures can often be great in place of non-creature spells. They can cover your interaction, card advantage, ramp, and general synergy quotas, while also leaving behind a useful body for many uses. Despite what I said during this video, I don't expect anyone to just go ahead and replace all the spells with creatures. That'd be as short-sighted as doing the opposite. Non-creature spells do have their place even in the most creature-heavy decks, for that instant speed, for dodging some removal, or just for their consistent reliability. Yet, do not disregard creatures. All I use the real gun. Thank you for watching. Do you have some evergreen creatures inclusions? Let me know in the comments below, and consider subscribing if you liked my rant. I'll try to be a tad quicker with future uploads, I promise. Okay, thanks, bye. Hey, welcome to the unscripted section at the end of the video, which I want to use to say some things that don't really fit in the video itself, like the fact that this video was a quick production actually, with respect to my previous videos, but I'm not really satisfied with the result, specifically about the script and how I recorded it. I don't feel really natural when I speak like that. Maybe I should go a bit more unscripted normally. Anyways, I couldn't really come up with a good enough joke for the end of the video this time, so have a little outtake instead of that. So, let's try again. You are building a NZ Toolbox Torre. A NZ Toolbox Torre, not NZ Toolbox Torre. A NZ Toolbox Torre. There are many of them, but you are building only one. Not even considering the servant, though, can be a bit short-sighted. Demonic Tutor or Grim Servant? It was not Demonic Tutor, it was Grim Tutor, I changed the script.